Hi, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Sophie, and we are here to help guide you to the why behind your wellness why.
Come join us on our journey. I'm excited for this one. We are back by popular demand with some more myths. It's been a hit. These have been a hit to talk through and lots of great questions and comments. So we're going to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I think these are really important with just all the information out there in today's world.
So we're going to kind of continue the conversation of the fitness setting in terms of workouts. And then for nutrition, we're going to dive a little bit into some grocery shopping myths. So, since we are kind of continuing from the conversation of the gym and fitness, let's start with you, Sophie, in terms of what are some other things that we didn't have time for last time that you hear frequently in the gym, and let's break it down a little bit.
I'm going to get right to it with sweating and soreness determining your workout and if it was good or bad.
So, like you're saying, if you sweat more, it's a better workout, or like if you're more sore, it's a better workout. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, but the answer to both of those questions are false.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Like nowadays, I remember, I think it's a little less in, but how HIIT just got so in with group fitness and people just wanting to like murder themselves in the gym and sweat it all out. And that does not determine the workout. I personally, and I do think it has to do with genetics. Okay. I learned in environmental physiology years ago that the sooner you sweat, it means you're in better shape because your body is trying to cool itself off. So your core temperature stays lower. So you can have like more energy expenditure, do more work for the workout. Fun fact, you're actually not really supposed to wipe your sweat because it's actually on your skin to help cool you off. But I do it too. Anyways, side note. And then I think soreness also sometimes, not all the time, is with genetics as well. Me personally, maybe it's because I ran for 15 years straight, but I also actually don't really get sore in my upper body either. But I only get sore maybe 4 times a month, and I work out probably 25 days a month. So it's like the math there, whatever that would be, it's like it's such a small percentage of my workouts I get sore from.
This is such a good conversation because I think we all have heard this or again have fallen into like, oh, I'm not getting a good workout if I'm not sweating, or like you said, the soreness factor too. I think we're all guilty of being like, was that a good workout? If, you're not sore, you're not sweating. If you're used to that, then trying to do opposite of that feels like it's not correct. You know what I mean? So like if you did grow up running or doing sports, or even if you didn't, and as an adult, like you got into like HIIT training or something like that, and then you're trying to switch your pattern, it's like, well, that's what my mind and body is used to. So if I'm trying something else, is it going to work? If that makes sense.
Yes. And I usually have to like break my clients and like educate them and be like, no, this is like false information. Like you should never be so sore that you can't like walk or sit on the toilet or like move the next day. Like you should be able to work out like a few days in a row. Obviously not doing the same exact thing, but like you should be able to get in some form of movement, including weights, multiple days in a row. You should never be like, if you're so sore that you're in pain, you did too much work.
Yes. Yeah. And can you talk about a little bit about like why that is, like why it might not be beneficial to be that sore?
So another reason for soreness, besides what I had just mentioned, is you're not recovering enough. which I'm sure Chelsea can chime in on this. You might not have slept enough, hydrated enough, nourished your body enough with food for yourself to rebuild your muscle. Because with strength training, which is different than cardio, is you are tearing your muscle fibers, and you need to provide your muscles the tools to repair themselves and get bigger and stronger.
Yeah. So if you're working out to your maximum or like working out really hard, let's use strength training as the example, and you're breaking down your muscles because that's what happens, and you're so sore that then you can't work out the next day or any of that. It's like it's because your muscle fibers are literally broken down, and if you're trying then to force yourself to work out on top of that, you're really, it's kind of like this double whammy, right? Of like, then you're breaking down your muscle fibers even more. And if the goal is muscle gain and you're not recovering from it, you might not see the results that you want to see. Am I understanding all of that correctly?
100%. And even
Okay.
like just going back on that and like burnout and just your stress levels and your cortisol and your hormones just like being crazy from like working out too much all the time is, I feel like, not the most beneficial for muscle gain and like fat loss even.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. So moving into, I know we're talking about this a lot, but I think it's really important because I think a lot of people feel this way with like sweating and soreness. So let's talk about sweating. So a lot of times people who are wanting to get a really high intensity workout, one where they're sweating, a lot of times from my end, and you can tell me from your end what you hear, is because they're trying to burn a lot of calories. And they're trying to burn a lot of calories because they're trying to burn fat or lose weight. So can you educate people on like that, why sweating doesn't equate, or why even the conversation of burning calories? Because I always tell my clients too, it kind of goes along with the same thing of sweating. Just because you did a workout and burned 600 calories does not mean that does not equal a good quality workout. And you might not get the results that you want to get, even if you're burning all of those calories. So can you talk about maybe some ways of like what would determine a good quality workout, or what might help with like fat loss and weight loss in that sense? I know I kind of asked multiple questions within that.
Yes. And I will try to answer them all.
Okay.
So I would use the term good workout loosely because it depends on someone's goals, which I just posted this in my Instagram story. Which comes first, cardio or weights? And the answer is it depends. Ideally, you wouldn't do cardio and strength in the same workout, actually. They would be about 6 hours apart for ideal results for both. And it's so false. People think like, oh, when you run, you just lose your muscle. I mean, that's not true. You have to train a specific way, but like that is like, if you were to lift and then go run, you're not like losing your muscle. Anyways, like to burn fat, ideally, I would say, get a solid warm up movement prep is ideal for the movements you're going to do. And then I would pick, let's say, 6 movements you want to work on that day, whether you want to do pairing, like supersets, upper, lower. And to burn more fat and do less strength, you would take shorter rest periods, not like HIIT. And I would say if you are newly lifting, I would increase the rest periods to make sure you can focus on your form, use the muscles you're trying to hit, which is going to help you look the way you want to look. And I'm going to sidetrack actually. So lifting versus cardio, you're going to be burning more calories for longer lifting, and you're going to be burning calories during cardio in the moment. I think that's also kind of what you were asking and getting at. So say you run for 30 minutes, you're burning calories for 30 minutes. And I'm going to use one of my clients as an example. I will not say her name, but she was a totally hit girl, cardio bunny, like runner. And I luckily broke down that facade. And now she is more of a lifter. She bought heavier weights for home and she only runs like 3 days a week. And yesterday she texted me at like 3 o'clock. She's like, I had breakfast, I had lunch, and I've had 3 snacks already today. And I was like, yeah, girl, because you like, we went hard this morning in your workout. Like, listen to your hunger cues. It's because she's burning so many more calories after the lift than after even a hard run. I know it might seem confusing and whatever. And people just love to feel that burn. I think that's another just chase we have, like the burn and like, I don't know, our bodies and like murdering ourselves, which it's so not.
Part of that is endorphins. Cause I even know like me, like if I go do a HIIT class, I feel really good afterwards. Like I feel just like, I feel like I'm on a high. Same with a long run. Like I am totally like, I get that runner's high. I 100% can relate to people who have that. Other people might be like, are you insane?
I don't think I've ever had that in the like 15 years of my running life.
Which is so funny because you grew up running.
Yeah, well, in middle school and high school and college.
Well, yeah, a lot of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel any different. I'm like, I might be dumber. Like I can't think as hard after a long run. Like if I go run 10 miles, like pretty hard, I don't know my name, but like I don't get like a runner's high. I feel the same. And I'm like, okay, can I like lay down now?
Yeah. So I think that's again like where this conversation is hard because I definitely don't want to like sit here and say like, oh, never do HIIT or like never run. And I don't think that's what you're saying. But I think it goes back to like our last podcast of like, there's a time and a place. If you're trying to lose fat and lose weight or change body composition, doing like pushing yourself and getting so sore or only focusing on like your Apple Watch calorie burn, that might not get you to your goals. So again, just disclaimer, like I'm good. If I would sit here and say don't do HIIT, I would be a hypocrite because I'd like that endorphin and that like high of HIIT. But I also know that if my goal were XYZ, that would not necessarily be accomplishing it.
Totally. And I would honestly ideally say like an ideal client or human being, I would have strength train 3 times a week and do like cardio twice a week.
Yes, I love that breakdown. Hearing that, I think that'll be helpful for people.
Both of those things would look different. The strength would look a little different based on one's goals, and the cardio would look a little different based on one's goals also.
So. Yeah, it depends. I say that like in any group setting, in any seminar or workshop, I always do what I call my it depends disclaimer of like, okay, here's, some basics, here's some things, but like it really depends on your individualized goals. So yeah, but that was a big one. I think that was really helpful because again, I think a lot of people struggle with that. So thanks for that information.
Hopefully I answered all the questions.
You definitely did. And if she didn't, if anyone has any other burning questions about that topic, you know how to get a hold of us.
Slide into my DMs.
Okay, should we dive into some nutrition stuff?
Bring it on me, girl.
Cool. So we're going to talk about all about the grocery store and grocery shopping and some things that have been brought up. What's one common thing you hear, Sophie?
Well, I was going to just say that I saw your Instagram reel and it was amazing about the center aisles of the grocery store and very helpful because everyone's always like, walk around the perimeter of the grocery store. That's where the healthy stuff is.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. So recently I just posted this on Instagram because I will say this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves in the wellness industry is the divide between nutrition and the food industry. And so first of all, that's like a whole different conversation. I think there's a lot of things in the food industry that just make as a consumer, like really, it makes my job a lot harder, which then makes like your guys' jobs to try to eat healthier a lot harder too, because it's confusing. It's like if you walk into the store, first of all, there's a million brands. There's, if you walk into the bread aisle or any aisle, I mean, even in the produce section, there's like, which we'll dive into this in a second, but it's like, okay, well, should I eat my vegetables raw or should I not? Should I buy organic or should I not? What type of yogurt do I buy? Like the food industry makes it really hard with like brands and stuff like that. So I think that's what's challenging is just like as a consumer, like all these questions I get are not stupid questions. Like nobody should ever feel silly for asking a question of like, what do I do when I'm grocery shopping? Because the food industry makes it really, really hard for us to like know what's right for your body. But yeah, so that's a big one. One of my biggest pet peeves with like health professionals is you hear people say like, oh, you should only shop the perimeter of the grocery store. And yeah, that's great. That's where your fruits are. That's where your vegetables are. That's where a lot of like your proteins are, like your chicken and your meats and your dairy and seafood. But like, or human, I know for me, it's not realistic to spend all this time in the kitchen cooking and chopping things and cooking things fresh. Like I need convenient food. I need to have things when I'm on the go and traveling, and that's going to fall into the center section. And there's lots of really good things there. Yeah. So on my Instagram, if you don't follow me, head to my Instagram and check it out because it shows you like what you should be buying. And a couple of people messaged me like you should start kind of a series on this because again, I think the grocery store is like this huge topic of like what do I do there because there's so many different brands. So yes, myth number one is you do not have to only shop the perimeter of the grocery store. There's lots of good things in the center aisles, lots of good grains like brown rice, quinoa, lentils, beans, oatmeal, things along those lines, nuts, seeds, dried fruit. Like there's so, I mean, yeah, check it out for actual examples, but you definitely don't only have to shop the perimeter of the grocery store.
Love
100%.
that.
Yeah. I know I had also mentioned the whole kind of like nutritional value of foods. So let's talk about produce specifically, like fresh produce, and then we can dive into like other areas of produce like frozen and canned. So a very common question I get is like, I've heard that you should either store your produce a certain way or you should buy this versus this, or like you shouldn't cook this vegetable because it's going to lose some of the nutritional value when you're cooking it. And again, depending on the food, there's actually a lot of truth to those myths. Well, they're not myths because there's a lot of truth, but I will say this. I always encourage you to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Is it true that if you cook a certain food, it might change the nutritional quality of it? Potentially. But is it still better than eating that food versus not eating that food at all? Absolutely.
Isn't it easier to digest too when foods are cooked?
It depends.
Damn.
Yeah, so I'm not fully going to answer that question because that gets a little bit more into like GI health and like um enzymes and all that type of stuff, which I feel like
Another day.
like, yeah, another day. But yeah, that's a really good question. For some people, yes, for other people, no. That it really depends. But yeah, so I think again we need to look at like the bigger picture of kind of like we were saying with working out, like what are your goals? And again, if we're finding, okay, you're really struggling to get in vegetables and we just need to find a way to get in vegetables, like my goal is to find the easiest way that's realistic for your lifestyle. And then yes, maybe down the road, yes, nutrients are important and micronutrients are important. I work with that with every single one of my clients. But again, we have to look at the big picture of what is better from the start. So in terms of like, should you store produce certain way? Yes, there's ways to store produce that helps with the quality of the food. That's true. But again, looking at like your environment, the other really hard thing with the produce section is at the end of the day, we don't always know because a lot of times, so I'll give this example because this just happened to me this last week. So you might hear store the food the way that it's bought. So, for example, if you find apples in the middle of the produce section, they're not refrigerated. You should store those apples not refrigerated. That's kind of like one way people think about it. But this happened to me this last week, and it happens often. Is even if a food is in the middle of a produce section, that might not be how it was stored previously to being there. So, a lot of times, because of, again, our food industry, they might have it somewhere in a fridge or whatever, and then put it out in that middle. So that advice doesn't always comply. So again, I think it's going back to like, you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at like, well, number one, where do you even have storage space? Number two, when are you going to be using it by? How are you going to be using it? All of those types of things kind of decipher like how a product should be stored. And then, kind of going along those lines too, the other thing I hear very often is, well, is there a difference between like frozen, canned, and fresh? So like, oh, well, I heard, fresh is the best for you because it has the most nutrients and it's the freshest and all of that type of stuff. Number one, I always encourage people to like look at what's actually in the product. So specifically with like frozen and canned, if if it's just what the product is, so if you go to the frozen vegetable section and buy frozen broccoli, if the ingredients are just broccoli, completely fine to do. It's just broccoli. Now, again, if you're getting broccoli and cheese sauce and your goal is to, be losing fat or losing weight, I'm not saying that you shouldn't eat cheese sauce, but again, it's kind of looking at like the overall time and place of what you're doing and how you're doing it. So in terms of like fresh versus canned versus frozen, it number one really depends on what else is in that product. But specifically comparing fresh and frozen, the other thing that a lot of individuals are miseducated on is frozen foods are actually picked at their prime state and then they are frozen. So a lot of times with frozen foods, this is really great for like fruits and vegetables that are out of season. Buying them frozen can actually sometimes be more beneficial because they're freezing it in their prime state when those fruits and vegetables are most in season. And a lot of times when fruits and vegetables are in season, they're going to have a higher nutrition quality. And so sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes frozen fruits and vegetables can actually have just as many nutrients, if not more, than fresh, depending on, again, your location, where you're shopping, time of year, all of that type of stuff. So frozen versus fresh versus canned, it depends on the situation. But honestly, from my professional experience, you shouldn't be avoiding any of them. I think it's just the right time and place of, again, like how you're including them in your diet.
Love that. Very helpful.
Yeah, so that was the big ones. I'd love to hear if anyone else like, again, I feel like there's a lot of things in the grocery store that people struggle with. So if there's other things that you've heard and you want us to, tell you if it's a myth or not a myth or just better explain it, let me know because I'd love to hear what other people struggle with. Like I said, I think the food industry, specifically the grocery store, is really complicated and it's hard to know like what brands are good and what you're actually getting with all of those types of things. So if people have questions, definitely reach out to me about that.
100%. Love it.
From a fitness standpoint, was there anything else today that you wanted to chat about? Anything we were missing from that end?
I just wanted to mention, because I feel like this has been a hot topic lately, is working out while pregnant. and strength training while pregnant. And I'm pre-postnatal certified, and working out while pregnant is actually so important and can help with so many things. Like, I'm going to rattle off like my handful of favorite things from my cert: that you actually push for less time, the baby's calmer, the placenta's bigger, which is important and good, which means like the baby's getting more nutrition and all that stuff. And I hate to say, but and use the term, but you like bounce back quicker. That goes for anything. Like, the stronger you go into surgery, the stronger you go into any sort of operation or major body thing, you're going to quote unquote bounce back quicker. And honestly, usually less likely for like back pain, like just all those things. And your doctor can monitor you, and they will, obviously, but there's no real danger in, especially if you already are working out before pregnant, continuing that while pregnant is amazing. You usually don't have to change anything the first trimester, and a little bit the second and the third, obviously more. But I just want to say that because I feel like some people freak out when they think of like pregnancy and working out.
Yeah, that's really helpful information. I know a lot of my clients currently are either like recently had a baby or are wanting to start a family soon. A lot of people that are in our circle are around that age. So I think that information is helpful to hear.
Oh, yeah. And just lastly on that, even if you've never worked out a day in your life, you're still allowed to start.
Even when you're pregnant, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Obviously,
I
like
love that.
way like less, start with like walking 30 minutes, like a handful of times a week, but you're still allowed. So
Yeah, that's great information. It's never too late, right?
never.
Never. Okay, so food for thought. I guess my food for thought, I'd already mentioned this from a nutrition standpoint. I would love for you guys out there to brainstorm what are your biggest challenges when you're grocery shopping. I think that question will bring awareness to what are some myths or what are some things that you've heard that you're not quite sure of, and like, where have you heard it from? I think that's something else important to brainstorm on, because I think that will bring awareness to, well, is this actually true, or was this something that just someone told me? And if that's the case, not saying it's not true, but ask a professional. So I would love for people to brainstorm that and then, share that with us of what are some of the challenges so we can help better guide you for that. What about you, Sophie? Is there anything from a fitness side, any big like takeaways or food for thought?
I want you to think about like why and what makes you think and feel you need to get super sweaty and sore after workouts. And if you like truly really like that, and like if you're able to work out the next day and whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah, great food for thought. I love it. Well, thanks everybody for joining in, and we look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts, and have a good rest of the day.
Later.